It all started unexpectedly when a strange woman approached a college student caressing Katsu. He was stunned, wondering why such a beautiful person would talk to a loner without friends like him. And he was even more surprised to learn that she knew about her secret place of daily living with Katsu. When he asked if she was there for the cats, she just handed him a ticket called a special offer that he realized was a ticket to reincarnation. The mystery woman just said she'd see him soon before she disappeared. Then suddenly, he fell into a dark void, completely disconcerted as his senses faded. He started hearing the sound of a crying baby, until he realized with a fright that crying was his own, when someone called for Prince Rufus, and he understood that he had been reincarnated into another world. A fantasy world called Manga, where he was now Rufus Elidoria, the third prince, considered a special offer. Growing up, he pretended to be a normal baby, to hide your adult consciousness from the maids. And he grew strong until his 7th birthday, when he would attend the skill heritage ceremony. Your older brothers. They approached and asked if he was nervous for the great event, performing as Gilliam, the first prince, and Leonard, the second prince of Elidoria. They reassured him, saying they were also nervous when his turn came in. So they took him to the ceremony hall. While he staggered timidly, and he stretched out his hand toward the shining crystal on the altar, feeling like a science fair, with his father the king, watching carefully. A priest officially called Prince Rufus Elidoria to advance and place his hand on the crystal. He then touched the sphere, his face full of admiration and expectation. And the priest announced that Rufus had awakened the calling ability, leaving Rufus wondering why everyone reacted so intensely to what he thought was only invocation magic. As I imagined summoning terrifying creatures and huge monsters. But then he doubted his ability to control such a powerful beast, even if he could summon it. He decided he'd rather be a tamer, surrounded by cute creatures anyway, just as his brother approached, saying that he had acquired a very rare skill. Then Rufus asked what exactly was the invocation ability, and was informed to visit the Guild of the Summoners for more details, since few people in the country had this ability. In fact, his brother believed that there were only 2 members in the whole Guild of Invocation when they arrived, were immediately received by a man named Bol, who introduced them to Sebastian, the guild leader, and a little girl named Lala. It made Rufus realize it was really just the 2 of them. And to get to the point, he asked Selbus to explain the skill, who took him to the guild library, a very small room with only a few bookcases. What led Rufus to think that calling it a library was a bit exaggerated. So Selbus gave him a book that looked like an encyclopedia, and he explained that what he could invoke was neither an animal nor a monster. They called these creatures magical beings. Rufus was in shock, thinking they were not found in the encyclopedias he had read in the Royal Library, wondering if I could just invoke them, because they seemed to be few the types. He thought the Habilidae were dubious, so he explained that it would be better to see someone performing an invocation, so he asked Miss Lala, who responded in shock. As she began to perform the invocation, our guy watched attentively, waiting for nothing scary to appear. She then ordered the marmot to manifest and a flow of magic was released. While the smoke was freed, our boy looked amazed. A cuddly groundhog appeared in place. He instantly looked at that cute creature in front of him. He turned to Lala, asking if she could juice other things too, but unfortunately, that was all she could do. It was then that Balt began to make his invocation, ordering in the name of Selbus Tian that Burden manifest himself. In the sequence, a small creature appeared on his shoulder. Rufus wondered if he could try as well, and Balt confirmed. He explained that it was necessary of the mental image of the creature in his heart to perform the invocation, and that he could summon his own magical beast when he had it. He thought of his words. He thought summoning this creature would be good to begin with. Remembering a parrot he used to have and resembled this creature, he commanded in the name of Rufus Eladoria. That Burden showed himself. Everyone was shocked that he could do it on his first attempt, believing it was impossible. But suddenly, the creature responds that it arrived as ordered, leaving everyone in the room in deep silence. They couldn't believe she really spoke. Our boy was also baffled, and judging by their reactions, having a magical creature capable of speaking was something quite unexpected. Our boy greeted Burden, wondering why he spoke. It's not like he didn't dream of talking to cute creatures before. He thought that maybe if he had the mental image strong enough, maybe he could invoke magical criteria different from those in the books, and he thought what he would do if he could have anything, which he would do. There were so many options that he began to lose his composure. There were so many details that he could not invoke anything in the end. They just faced our boys wildly out of control, getting Prince Rufus' attention, but he just kept freaking out. Another version of himself commented that since he was 7 years old, so it was not shameful. Until everyone got into a concentration, our boy with his multiple personalities came to an agreement that it wasn't that weird. He then tried to summon a white dragon with red feathers and eyes, with all his excitement. But nothing happened. He was ashamed to even say it out loud, and everyone was amazed to see him. While our guy wanted to be an ostrich and interrogate himself on Earth, something caught your eye, to the point that he was completely shocked. The great creature really appeared before you. Something much more impressive than he expected had just appeared. While I imagined invoking a giant, cute beast with a jewel on his forehead that leaned towards him, the vision was so intense that Balt had to hold him because he almost fainted. Rufus looked at his trembling hands, realizing that he was exhausted and that calling several times would be difficult. Meanwhile, Lala was completely frozen from shock on the floor, which was an understandable reaction, so Rufus stayed there, a little stunned too. The huge creature spoke, complaining that the room was too tight and asked to knock down a wall. It caused Rufus to exclaim by surprise that the creature could speak. So he, nervous, asked if she could get a little smaller, but the creature called it an unreasonable request. Then she agreed, but only on the condition that Rufus gave her a name, which surprised him. The creature explained that with a name, it would become exclusively of him and could change its size freely by command. Well, that's what I expected. Realizing that this meant that he could keep her as some kind of pet, Rufus, excited, named the creature Ragios. The creature accepted the happy name, while a little bird named Peep also appeared. Rufus immediately asked Ragios if he could shrink to the same size as Peep, a thought that filled him with so much joy that his eyes shone and he began to drool. So he watched with absolute delight as Ragios turned into a cute-haired ball the size of a puppy. While Ragios apologized for being his size limit, Rufus was busy melting into a sea of cuteness to care. And when Ragios felt that he had failed and should disappear, Rufus quickly asked him to wait, reassuring his new companion that the cub size was absolutely perfect. So he took the sweetest Ragios, who told him he never had to ask permission to do so, making Rufus feel as if he were ascending to heaven of pure joy while Selbus watched with grave concern. As Selbus stated that they should immediately report this unregistered magical creature who speaks the human language to the king, they quickly returned to the palace, visibly confused by the rapid change of events. Rufus broke into the throne room, announcing an emergency to his father. The king looked from above the throne, demanding to know what was happening, so Rufus proudly introduced his new friend. Introducing Ragios, a white feathered dragon from the red eyes. As the king looked unbelieving, Rufus also introduced Peep, the perched bird on his shoulder, when Rufus encouraged them to greet their father. Ragios returned to his giant size and threatened not to show mercy if the king harmed his master, leaving the king terrified. So the burdened king demanded that Rufus explain everything from the beginning, trying to process the fact that your son had invoked magical creatures completely unknown. When the king asked how he had invoked a dragon, Rufus explained that he only imagined, which left the king even more perplexed. Then Ragios released another roar, making the king scream with terror once more. Leaving Rufus alone in the throne room after the end of the chaotic meeting, and the king, looking completely defeated, named Rufus as the new master of the guild, while Ragios played biting his head. A decision that surprised Rufus, but Selbus explained that he had already accepted to be the vice master of the guild. As the king explained, since Ragios is such a precious and unknown creature, Rufus' new mission is to research it. And from now on, he must continue to report with responsibility any magical creature he invokes. So the king, still shaken, begged Rufus to tell Lord Ragios that he was okay. What led Rufus to reflect on how serious things had become, though he was thrilled to be allowed to keep his new friends, especially since the custom of pets didn't even exist in this world, which meant that he could now legally create the hairy paradise of his dreams, a thought that almost made him faint with joy until his mother appeared. She asked if he had finished his report to the king. Then she looked down and curiously asked what those little creatures were in her arms. So Rufus happily introduced Ragios, the white feathered dragon, and Red Eye. But your mother just faced, in shock, almost unable to say the word dragon. Before she could do anything, she suddenly fainted right in front of you, letting Rufus think that the shock of seeing magical creatures for the first time was too much for her. He left after leaving his mother to bed. Someone called your name, and his two older brothers, Gilliam and Leonard, rushed in, explaining that the king had told them about the incredible magical creatures. Thus, Gilliam the scholar. He was extremely excited and asked if he could touch them. And while gently caressing Ragios, who seemed troubled, Leonard carefully asked if they were safe. Rufus then had to ask his brother to stop, for Ragios was clearly getting angry with so much affection. But Gilliam was completely fascinated and insisted Rufus tell you everything later. And after an exhausting day, Rufus said goodnight to his sleeping companions. So while he was starting to fall asleep, a mysterious figure appeared in his room. Suddenly, he woke up, rubbing his eyes. In a strange white void where he met before the mysterious woman of the day, he was reincarnated, who revealed himself as Moon God, the creator god of this world. She then explained that she was the one who brought her dying soul from Earth into her world. And when he asked, why, she told you that from now on, his mission was to massively increase the recognition of the invocation ability. Leaving Rufus completely confused with his strange request, as the creator god stated that it would now seriously increase the popularity of the invocation ability. Rufus kept thinking about what she meant by increasing seriously. When she asked if he would accept the task, he panicked, demanding an adequate explanation. So, God, a little angry, sighed, and agreed to explain after a cute flower creature appeared. Suddenly, the scene moved into a classroom, where a teaching version of God was facing a whiteboard. Rufus was completely shocked by the bizarre change. As the goddess teacher began her class, explaining that the invocation ability is incredibly important to Moonguard, she drew a diagram showing that the mana used in her world disappears forever, and that the invocation ability is the only way to replenish it. Then, a game of a cat showed that the creatures invoked act as conduits that bring new mana into the world, leaving Rufus staring, totally confused, with that strange and childish presentation. And the god teacher continued to explain that, because it is such a rare skill, almost no one knows its true purpose to save the world. So she hit the board with a pointer, confirming he was following. By revealing that he inherited this skill because of his intense love for animals, as people receive skills based on their deepest desires. And she chose him from Earth specifically because she heard that Earthlings have incredible imaginations. Then, he casually added that inheriting an ability also grants the ability to use magic, which caused Rufus to drop a breath of shock. And he was extremely excited by the possibility of using everyday magic of attack, healing, and magic. But the teacher god quickly returned to the main subject. So he asked why she couldn't just send Sis into the world herself, since she is a god, and she explained that doing so would cause catastrophic disasters that would completely destroy Moonguard, because though she loves her world and its inhabitants, if the sister ever ends, he will become uninhabitable. That's why she needs her powerful imagination and his love for animals to spread the skill and use it as much as possible. Rufus thus accepted the mission with enthusiasm, promising that he was the man for the job. And the creator god smiled gently, while she told him that she was happy to have chosen him and that she was counting on him to get it. So as she disappeared, he wondered why the whole scene looked so strangely familiar. And suddenly he saw himself falling into the void again, before waking up with a bump in his own bed, sitting, looking exhausted and confused with the strange dream. But while I was trying to figure out if that was real, Ragios spoke beside him, confirming that it was not a dream. And he gave him a message from the creator god, not to forget his promise. Then Rufus realized Peep had disappeared, and Ragios explained that the bird had already returned. And this, since Ragios was ordered to be his body. Rufus could just call Peep back any minute. So he did exactly that. And Peep showed up with a lively greeting. Glad to be back. Then, Rufus announced that his plan for the day was to introduce his new friends to everyone. The scene moved to the castle training camp, where knights were fighting in a sparring. Rufus arrived with his companions, wanting to show them to all the knights. While the knights murmured about how cute Rufus was, Ragios worried, thinking it was the wrong kind of attention. Then your brother Leonard came to caressing your head and commending him for his effort, as they remembered how even their scholar brother Gilliam had to train hard to become a skilled fighter. And just then, Gilliam showed up, wanting to hear the fun story Leonard was telling. So Rufus took the opportunity to ask Gilliam if inheriting an ability really means that you can use magic, explaining that he wanted to find out what kind of magic he could use. Then Gilliam suggested using the wide training camps to test, since he had learned nothing from the guild, and decided they should start with a simple light spell explaining that it's a perfect basic spell to practice, since anyone can use it. Then Rufus eagerly reached out and cried out the name of the spell. But nothing happened. He tried again, completely confused, while Gilliam also wondered why it was not working. Then, Gilliam advised him to focus on his sister, and he tried one last time. But when he also failed, he begged his brother to teach him other spells, which Gilliam refused. Rufus was completely discouraged after every failed attempt, wondering if his career in magic was over. He then ran back to the Guild of the Callers to see Selbus and Lala. "Were you told them you had an urgent question?" he asked what kind of magic he could use with his invocation skills. But Selbus and Lala just landed a serious look at each other. So Selbus revealed that the invocation ability does not allow the user to cast magic spells of any kind. What made our boy discouraged? Back in the palace, a desolate Rufus wailed while Gilliam tried to cheer him up. But all of a sudden, Rufus broke into manic laughter, with a new idea that scared Selbus and Lala. He stated that if he can't use magic alone, he'll make his invoked creatures use it for him. Realizing that to create fire, it was enough to summon a creature who could spit fire. He remembered the perfect creature of the encyclopedia, and shouted with confidence, "Summon Salamandra!" As a cloud of smoke formed in front of you, and a lovely little creature, like a lizard, with a flame on her head, showed up asking if she'd been called. That made Rufus completely lose control, because it was taken by a whole new level of cuteness. So Lala, nervous, asked if he wasn't hot, but he explained that he wasn't in attack model. Rufus then asked her to try to burn a piece of paper that he held in a bowl, and the little creature released an incredibly powerful burst of fire. That surprised him. That led him to praise the incredible salamander for its power. And he realized with joy that this was the magic of the invocational ability, and that he could use magic through his invocations, which left Selbus completely impressed by the ingenuity of the new guild master. And he admitted that he had never considered the true possibilities of skill before. Rufus told them both to raise their heads and join him, showing the world how useful the invocation ability really is. So, he officially named Kian Salamander, who happily accepted his new name. And as it still had enough energy, decided to further test the firepower of Kian, playing that could burn the castle just for fun. But unfortunately, your parents came in just then. His mother looked with horror and demanded to know what he had just said, while Rufus began to panic. His mother, with a rigid expression, demanded that he explain the meaning of his actions, and he panicked when he thought that the training camp had suddenly become a battlefield with her arrival. Then, she looked at the new creature and asked who that child was. Rufus, nervous, introduced Kian, the salamander, which made your mother's eyes burst out of shock. She gasped, "A lizard," before he fainted again, while Rufus screamed his name. So Leonard helped the queen get up, and he thought it was just too much stimulation. After recovering, she apologized and asked Rufus to introduce her properly to her children. He explained that he was curious about them since the day before, when they could not speak properly. Rufus then asked his defendants to introduce themselves, and Kian, Peep, and Regio spoke their names proudly. It made your mother wonder, and she asked if she could touch them. Ragios reluctantly agreed to endure this, only for her. She gently caressed Regio's head, admiring how cute he was. Then he held Kian, said he had a lovely face, and apologized for being scared before. Finally, he smiled warmly, and asked everyone to take good care of his son. Rufus was surprised and moved to realize that she had only come to say hello. Back in the guild, Lala was completely terrified by Kian, and Rufus wondered if she was afraid of salamanders, so he thought how convenient it would be for her to have a fire-like creature for herself. While Lala was busy studying with the help of Peep, he considered that a bird-like creature could be a better choice for her, and putting his hand on the book began a new invocation of a fiery bird. Rufus held his chest, completely dominated by his cuteness, who manifested himself as an incredibly rounded and adorable bird, who let loose a little joke. He thought of how her charm was totally different from Peep's, but still incredibly cute. And when the new bird exhaled a small flame, he declared that cute creatures are really geniuses, while Lala watched with wide eyes. Then he introduced the new invocation, asking what she thought of her, introducing the little creature as Okun, a bird of fire. Lala was immediately enchanted, blushing as she looked at the cute little bird. She held Okun gently in her hands, thinking she might be able to summon an equal. Meanwhile, Rufus found Selbus in the library. Busy with a new project, Selbus explained that with so many new creatures appearing, he thought they needed an illustrated guide to the reports. Rufus thought the idea was excellent until he saw Selbus' extremely simplistic design. So he turned to Bolt and asked if he could draw. But Bolt firmly stated that he could not draw anything. Rufus then looked at Lala, who drew joyfully, and with a malicious smile, decided that he would have to do it himself. However, his attempt resulted in a childish scribble that made Kian exclaim how horrible he was. When Selbus suggested hiring a court painter, Rufus found the idea frustrating. And suddenly, he had a better idea. When you cried out, "Art Bear," a cloud of smoke filled the room. She slipped away slowly, revealing a large rounded shadow. Then came a giant, white, cute bear that Rufus immediately embraced. Exclaiming how soft he was, he named Beard's new creature and said to prepare, because I wanted to see your power in action. Rufus asked Beard to draw Regios, and the bear started scribbling in a notebook. Then he revealed a masterpiece, an incredibly realistic portrait of Regios, who left Rufus and Selbus speechless in the face of impressive speed and quality. When Lala asked if he could draw in other styles, the bear quickly sketched a beautiful portrait of her in Shouja's manga style. At that moment, the king and his companions arrived, having heard of the new invocation. The king seemed completely impressed, commenting on how the number of creatures had grown considerably. Then, Rufus tried to get his companions to greet his father, but the king shouted that they should stay exactly where they were. He asked Rufus to be quiet for a while, and admitted that he didn't really like them that much. This left Rufus with unexpected free time, so he decided to show the castle to everyone, though I was worried that such a strange group walking along would draw too much attention. He was tired of just sitting in his room doing nothing. Suddenly, he remembered his brother Leonard telling him about exploring the basement of the castle, which sparked an intense internal debate between different versions of himself. His cautious side argued against the idea, while his adventurous sides dreamed of treasures and new discoveries. In the end, his adventurous side won, questioning whether he really wanted to live a life without adventure after being reincarnated. After a painful mental battle, the conclusion was made. He announced to his comrades that they would go to the basement. Then he explained that it was in a section where only royalty could enter behind an old-style black door. Soon they found a large decorated door covered in vineyards at the end of a long corridor. He hummed with excitement, wondering what kind of adventure awaited them inside. But when the door creaked as it opened, it revealed a terrifying headless knight, making Rufus realize that things had become extremely serious. The king's voice echoed in his mind, telling him to remain silent for a while. Rufus looked at the headless knight and realized that they were in great danger now, because they definitely couldn't keep quiet. Then he remembered a few hours earlier, when he first entered the dark, damp basement with Regios. And although Regios had warned him to watch his step, Rufus was confident that darkness would not be a problem. After all, he had the fire of Kian to light the way. The flame of the little salamander lit a candlestick like by magic, lighting the long stone corridor in front of them. After walking for a time that seemed like an eternity, Rufus realized that there was nothing there, even though his brother Leonard spoke so seriously about the place. Suddenly, he heard a click and turned to see a great metal gate closing hard behind them, arresting them in there while Regios screamed his name. Before he could react, something advanced against him from the darkness. The terrifying Dullahan, mounted on his spectral horse, galloped towards him by releasing a chilling scream. Rufus was thrown back by the force of the creature's presence. In shock, he faced the headless armor, realizing that a Dullahan was guarding the basement, which made a twisted kind of sense for a real secret passage. So, he deduced that, as there was another door ahead, that must have been some kind of defense mechanism that had been activated. But that didn't stop him from wanting to run home when Dullahan's horse stepped up with a terrifying moan. Then the animal advanced again at high speed. Suddenly, your brother Leonard came out of nowhere, asking what kind of fun he was having. Then Gilliam also appeared, scolding him for not inviting his brothers to the adventure. Rufus was thrilled to see them while Gilliam was checking on him. His brothers explained that the basement was full of traps and that he could not leave easily now that the defense system was active. And Leonard warned him with a singing smile that everyone would be in serious trouble if their father found out about that little tour. Then he turned to face Dullahan and greeted him like an old friend before preparing to fight. This surprised Rufus, who discovered that Leonard had faced exactly this creature as a child. And though it caused you a lot of trouble back then, now he was much stronger. It went into a blur of motion. Your sword moving too fast to be seen? Rufus was completely stunned, unable to follow the attack, while Leonard laughed at how much weaker Dullahan seemed now. After defeating the creature, a new door creaked as it opened, while his brothers admired the power of the sacred skill of the sword. But the adventure had not yet ended. A group of gargoyles appeared, and Gilliam advanced, eager for his own chance to impress his younger brother. With a single powerful burst of magic, the gargoyle was instantly reduced to ashes, leaving Gilliam a little disappointed. While the brothers congratulated each other, Rufus felt a hint of sadness. He realized he was always being protected, for his own power was not even compared to that of the others, while everyone was moving towards the final room. He followed them, feeling small and useless, and he was horrified to see that. This time, they'd have to face Dullahan and the gargoyles at the same time. But his brothers just slapped him in the head, saying that there are times when a man needs to fight and encourage him to take the lead. He protested, saying he didn't know how to use swords or magic, but they just reassured him, saying it's okay, because he was the younger brother, what Rufus thought was absurd. Then Regios took a step forward, declaring that his colleagues could fight as well as Rufus' brothers, and asked for his orders. With renewed trust, Rufus got a leak and prepared to give the commands, He pointed dramatically and cried out to Ragios to go, who answered with confidence, "As you wish." Then Ragios simply touched the stone floor with his paw, and the mighty Dullahan immediately disintegrated into a cloud of black dust, leaving Rufus and his brothers completely speechless. But as more monsters appeared, Rufus ordered Beard and Kyan to enter the battle after all. That had not even been a real warm-up for Ragios. He encouraged them, and his brothers watched with total astonishment. While his invocation triggered a devastating coordinated attack that easily eliminated the remaining monsters, then Beard proudly announced that the battle had ended, and Rufus congratulated his team on the excellent work. Leonard, in turn, murmured, unbelieving that he had not done so much damage when he was down there. While the victorious group stood before the final gate, it opened slowly with a bang. It revealed an intensely lit room that made Rufus half close his eyes. It was a large, empty, and open space, except for a single stone pedestal in the center. His brother made a slight cut on his finger. It was then that Rufus realized Gilliam was bleeding, but his brother minimized, saying he would soon heal, and pointed out that his blood had dripped on the pedestal, activating a hidden mechanism. When the pedestal began to shine, a section of the wall moved and slipped, revealing a secret passage, a fascinating sight to behold. Gilliam explained that the mechanism only reacted to royal blood, so only members of the royal family could enter that area. He told Rufus he'd have to go inside to find out what was hiding there. Rufus went through the opening and found himself in an immense vault filled with mountains of gold and treasures. He was amazed to realize that the legends about a secret treasure vault were really true. But his brothers explained that the basement had been built as a sturdy emergency shelter, and that safe was actually used to store emergency supplies, something that all family members eventually discover over time. While Rufus wondered if this secret was revealed when they inherited his abilities, Ragios was suddenly on alert. Feeling the presence of a powerful companion on the other side of the distant wall, Rufus wondered if it could be another powerful magical creature. His brothers hit the wall and confirmed that there was a space beyond it, but not even Leonard's strength could break. When Rufus put his hand on the wall, she started to shine and dematerialize, like she was inviting him in. Then, a deep voice echoed from within, asking who dared disturb his sleep. Making Rufus back scared, the wall turned into a collapsed, revealing a small creature in the shape of a bot, leaving Rufus completely perplexed. While swallowing dry, still nervous, with the resounding voice that repeated the question about who dared disturb his sleep, Rufus cautiously approached the strange creature that had emerged from the wall. Suddenly, she starts laughing, which made him even more confused. The little box just blew, and she admitted she always wanted to make a dramatic entrance like that. But then his brothers became suspicious, calling it a talking trap and threatening to dismantle it, which made the box panic and insist that it was not an evil trap. Rufus asked nicely if she'd been there alone all this time, and the box confirmed that yes. Explaining that he was waiting for a new master, which surprised Rufus, he formally asked if he would become his new master, which left him speechless. So he clarified that he meant contractor, and the box confirmed that's what it was. He asked how someone becomes his master, and the box explained that whoever gives him a name becomes his master. What your brothers did. Start screaming random names right away. Rufus then turned to Ragios and asked if it was possible to make a creature invoked by another person his own. Ragios explained that this is only possible if the original caller is no longer in this world. It made Rufus look at the little box with a sad expression. realizing that she was probably alone down there a long time since her master passed away after your brothers ran out of names. He asked if he could name her himself. The box agreed with enthusiasm, asking him to do so. He then asked if she really was waiting for someone this whole time, and the box confirmed that she did. Explaining she was so bored, she spent her time thinking about the perfect greeting for the next person she met, which led to the dramatic entrance earlier. As it was a trap box, Rufus began to suggest names such as Toragoro and Torasuk, which the box considered problematic in various ways, so he finally decided by the name Torashan, and asked the little box if she liked that name. This caused the box to begin to shine intensely of happiness. While everyone was watching marvels, with a flash of light, the box announced that the master's re-registration was complete. Then he declared that from that moment he would be his loyal servant, which made Rufus blush and stutter. While his brothers provoked him about why he chose that name, but he insisted that magical creatures are friends, and Torashan is also a friend, which seemed to make the little box very happy. And while stirring with joy, Rufus marveled at the infinite possibilities of his invocational ability, realizing that he could even invoke non-animal creatures, like robots. As they left the vault, Leonard commented that he never knew of a secret room like that. And Gilliam wondered if Torashan kept any kind of secret. Then Gilliam asked what was inside the box, and she replied that there were many things inside. After Tora ignored her, since she was not her master, Rufus happily asked Torashan to show the contents. The box then opened its lid and removed a scary apple with thorns and a nail-covered baseball bat. Then came a slipper and a variety of other strange objects, leaving Rufus and his brothers completely shocked by the bizarre content. As the box continued to draw strange weapons from its seemingly infinite four-dimensional space, Leonard wondered if those were real guns, since he'd never seen anything like it. That made Leonard proudly declare that he had better things than their treasure chest. Rufus caught a strange-looking cable that, somehow, it looked familiar. A beam of light came out of it, forming a lightsaber. He then explained to his confused brothers that it was a weapon from a galaxy far, far away, long ago. But he quickly kept it, realizing that it almost broke the construction of the world, and suggested they look at more normal weapons. Then he took a huge, long sword and had difficulty lifting the heavy old-fashioned weapon. He declared he wanted to try to swing it, but his brothers asked him to wait, since he could barely keep his sword up. With a powerful scream, he rocked it with all his might, creating an intense shock wave. It completely destroyed the stone wall behind him, leaving him and his brothers silent, stunned. When the dust went down, it revealed the huge hole he had created. He looked at his hands, unbelieving, trying to understand what had just happened. But his brothers were more concerned about the castle wall that he had just destroyed. Rufus, who had never seen anything like it, asked Leonard if he knew what that sword was. With a shock expression, Leonard knew what it was. He realized he was holding the legendary sacred sword Excalibur, and he began to wonder if he had actually taken a sacred sword from a talking chest in the basement. His brothers admired the unmistakable glow of Excalibur, amazed. And Leonard was so moved that he began to rub his face on the sword, which made Rufus wonder if he also seemed so ridiculous when he melted by his invocations. Then, Leonard suddenly asked if he could keep the sword, and Gilliam immediately told him to retreat. But Rufus agreed, saying it would be wasted on him anyway, and his brother hugged him in thanks. Gilliam had to pull a grumpy Leonard away from his little brother as they decided to leave the basement now destroyed. As they left, Rufus breathed a sigh of relief. But Leonard suggested that they keep the treasure chest a secret for now, and Rufus wondered what he was up to. Then their father suddenly appeared, with an angry expression, making the three brothers jump out of a fright. He revealed he knew everything, because he felt the tremor caused by Rufus' sword stroke. And before anyone could explain, Leonard proudly showed his father the legendary sword, Excalibur. This caused Rufus and Gilliam to carry their hand to their face in the face of their brother's total lack of sense, while their father watched with a fun expression. He then, with a sinister smile, summoned them to his office to hear the whole story. There, they were severely reprimanded for their little adventure. Rufus explained that Torashan was a trap box that an ancestor with the invocation ability had long ago called. The king then asked if Lord Torashan could produce other legendary weapons as well. Rufus decided to test this theory, asking Torashan for the Durandal magic sword, which was immediately produced. Then asked for the sacred spear Gungnir, which was also there. And finally, the Longinus magic spear, which, to his surprise, Torashan also possessed. Rufus laughed with joy when he realized that Torashan really had everything, while his father told him not to simply assert it. And the king used his assessment ability to confirm that the sword was indeed the true Excalibur. So he reminded everyone that entering the basement without permission was strictly forbidden. But as what was done was already done, he decided that proper punishment was necessary. He thus assigned Gilliam and Leonard the monumental task of creating a complete catalogue of weapons from the entire Torashan arsenal, which made Gilliam moan with despair. Their job was to use this catalogue to verify that Torashan had the corresponding weapons. Then the king ordered Leonard to return Excalibur to Torashan, which made him cry out of disappointment. The next day, Rufus and his companions arrived at the hall his father had appointed for work. Feeling guilty, because his brothers were also involved in his punishment, suddenly he heard his brother Leonard crying inside the room. He peeked and saw him completely passed out on a huge pile of papers. Leonard whispered in his sleep that he was a strong man, and that I would never give up the endless office work, which made Rufus feel incredibly guilty for getting him into this mess. Then, he heard Gilliam scream, "I wish I'd done everything myself." That left Rufus completely speechless. In view of his brother's strange priorities, he witnessed a scene of pure chaos. Gilliam had to wield the sword Excalibur from Leonard's hands, while Leonard was forced to stay in the paperwork, completely the reverse of what they'd like. And Rufus realized that their father had craftily engineered the punishment.